Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison. I want to welcome you to this session of Humanity Rising as we continue our 5-day program, now in its 4th day, on AI literacy. How does the human community understand artificial intelligence in terms of its promise, but also its dystopian possibilities at a time in history where turbulence rather than normalcy seems to characterize the context of human affairs. We're going to be talking a lot about context today for AI, and I want to just bring into our collective awareness a report that was issued today by the UN Meteorological Organization that the level of CO2 in the Earth's atmosphere has reached a record level. It's 50% higher than the CO2 in the pre-industrial times. And there has not been this level of CO2 in the Earth's atmosphere for the last 3 to 5 million years. And that was a time when the oceans around the world were 30 to 60 meters higher than they are today. And global temperatures were 2 to 3 degrees centigrade. We brought to our attention last week the data that the global temperatures were now hotter in the year 2023 than at any time in the last 125,000 years. And today, we're being told that the amount of CO2 is higher than at any time in the last 3 to 5 million years. It's also the case that fossil fuel use is at record levels, and that the attention of our governments is so distracted, mostly by war with each other, that essentially the climate issue is off the agenda, and we're headed in a couple of weeks to COP28, the Conference of Parties that for the last 28 years have been meeting in an effort to solve the global crisis. And guess who is the chairman of COP28, which is being held in Dubai, one of the big oil producing countries in the world? The chairman is the Minister of Oil. And that gives us a sense of the priority and the attention that our imminent demise due to increasingly turbulent and intense climate change is wrecking on our world. And yet we go on blithely unaware, like we were those passengers on the Titanic as it steamed full speed ahead right into the iceberg. And it's an amazing thing if you just take a moment to imagine we're all on the Titanic. We see the iceberg, and we're begging the pilot to increase velocity. And we know when we hit the iceberg, we're all going to sink. And yet it's full speed ahead with global warming and oil production and war and exploitation. And within that, we're talking about machine learning and machine intelligence, AI literacy. And the point that I want to make today is a very serious one. We're not dealing with AI from a neutral platform. We think, because we have some rational capacities, that we can just talk about AI like we talk about history, like we talk about the use of various medications in our healthcare system in a rational way. Nothing could be farther from the truth. The very distortion in the human psyche that enables us to continue to pollute the atmosphere and hasten our doom is the same psyche that is contemplating artificial intelligence, that is contemplating whether we should have a ceasefire in the Middle East or a ceasefire in Ukraine or stopping to pillage the Amazon. It is not as if we are distorted in one area, but we're clear in other areas. That's not how the psyche works. So the change in consciousness required to ensure a positive outcome for AI is the same change in consciousness that is required for the human race to do something about climate change, something about its complete enthusiasm for more war at a moment when we should be cooperating in an unprecedented way to save ourselves. It's an extraordinary moment. We're as illiterate about ourselves and our world as we are about AI. And whatever we can do to clarify the magnitude of our predicament and the distortion in our perceptual field is of urgent, historic, and I would say moral imperative. And of course, that's what we try to do on Humanity Rising day by day. How do we bring light to these issues in a way that will enable humanity to rise, to take control of our destiny in a way that honors the potential and the dignity that in the recesses of the psyche we're also capable, and create a world, as we often say, that is worthy of our children unto the seventh generation. So it's within that context that I want to welcome Tom Eddington and Georg Boch to our program. We're always juxtaposing here at Humanity Rising many different factors that contribute to our human condition. So thank you, gentlemen, and I turn the program over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Jim, and thank you as always for your opening remarks. I was taken back to our program last week with Jude Caravan, where she talked about as a species we have this evolutionary impulse to evolve, to elevate our consciousness, but we also discussed the reality that we are adolescents as a species. And we're acting like adolescents. We're acting against our self-interest, expecting that some elder is going to step in and fix the problem for us. And, unfortunately, I see much of the thinking and much of the rhetoric around artificial intelligence is being held up as that wizened elder, that undying belief in technology being able to solve everything is going to provide us with the solutions, whether it's for climate change or anything else. And so I've really enjoyed the program and the discussions this week, and looking forward to our discussion with Robb Smith today. So I'll turn it over to you, Georg. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Tom. Yeah, this has been a great intro, Jim. Just to try to build on your point, it seems to me that after a year, just 12 short months of ChatGPT, we're somehow more concerned about the future of our species than after 30 years of climate change communication. We are really eager to race to hypothetical risk about AI launching nukes, while we are very much involved with conflicts that could launch nukes by humans any moment. And so, yeah, this is a quite interesting point you're making there, Jim. And this point that you started with of living in an age where it's hard to stay sane or to have a comprehensive view of reality. This is really my story. And today's guest, in a way, represents the integral movement that has been really, really important in my life. It was around 2012 that I stumbled in the internet over the integral framework. And it's really not too much to say that it was a complete psychoactive experience. It sounds almost like a marketing gimmick when you read about it, but for me, it was really a operating system for my entire being that changed the way I could understand reality, and it made me feel more complete and whole, and launched my life on a totally different avenue I would have never pursued otherwise. And so I'm very happy that today we are joined by Robb Smith, who is a social innovator who coined the term transformation age. He's the leader he is a leader in the integral philosophy, a global integrative meta theory movement. And I'm sure pretty much all of you, or many of you, know Robb if you're in the integral space. He is the CEO of Integral Life. He advises entrepreneurs, executives, and thought leaders on the leading edge of innovation and application of integral philosophy. And in 2022, he helped to create the Institute for Applied Meta Theory, which helps experiment and apply integral meta theory in action. Then in 2023, this institute spun out Context, the first augmented leadership platform, which merges AI with mental model visualization, which helps leaders think integrally, naturally, and easily. So I'm very excited to have you with us today, Robb. And the great thing is that we will not just speak about AI, we will actually play around with Context AI and learn by doing and see what AI reflects back at us. But
great, thanks for having me.
Wonderful. So Robb, I was thinking to start off, maybe it would be helpful to unpack this term transformation age that you coined a while back as it relates to AI. One of the great contributions that I got from Integral Life was when, right at the beginning, when ChatGPT was launched, you made a podcast on the ontological shock that AI creates for us. And to me, this has held up. I think it's psychologically very taxing to not be defined by the ability to think rationally anymore as a human being, that there needs to be something else beyond that that makes us feel human, right? So I'm curious if you could help us kind of recap this transformation age term as it relates to AI.
Sure, and thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here with everybody, and it's a really cool conversation, and certainly very, very timely. Yeah, I mean, 10 years ago, I did a short TED talk on what I called the transformational life, but at the time, I was already thinking about the transformation age and the idea that we were leaving the information age. And the argument of that talk, or the thesis, was with high-speed data networks and the smartphone, really 2007, it was very clear that we were making a shift into a really connected global civilization that, importantly, was connected in real time. And it was connected in real time with an interface layer via the smartphone that allowed us to kind of infinite access to everything that we wanted to have access to anywhere at all times. And so it was very obvious that that was a distinct and new kind of era arising, and that unlike kind of the flat information age where information was distributed through all these controlled channels, the transformation age was going to disrupt that in some important ways. It was also clear that we were going to encounter some exponential technologies, some genuinely kind of epoch-shifting technologies on behalf of society. Quantum computing being one, DNA editing via CRISPR and related technologies being one, artificial general intelligence, probably, as I've said in many times in other talks, probably free energy sometime this century. I think we'll crack the free energy thing. So if you add these things up, they not only is 1 + 1 5, it's like each one is a power function of the next one, right? You go to free energy, you have a fundamentally different economic situation worldwide in terms of real wealth. You get AGI and you combine it with quantum computing, you probably can solve every serious scientific problem we currently face, and so on and so forth. Now, I mean, there's no magic wand here and no crystal ball. We don't know when exactly these things will hit, but we can see within our lifetimes each one coming down the line, and these are really going to be fundamentally extraordinary, but they also, every age brings its own challenges, so that obviously goes without saying. But what was clear is that there was genuinely going to be transformation and what it did to human life and how we make sense of ourselves going forward.
Yes, absolutely. What I was struck by when we last spoke is how rapid this AI thing just develops. If we look at what is available today, it had hardly anything to do with what the universe or the AI space was 12 months ago when ChatGPT was released. It's almost like a Cambrian explosion of creativity in all directions, as if everything is being tried out at once. At the same time, what you argued was that if we look at the way human beings or even startups are trying to create business models around AI, there seems to be some kind of different rules at play as compared to the internet before, right? So if we look at what what OpenAI announced with their latest GPT update, it seems as if many of the ideas that could be developed by startups are just being absorbed or assimilated into this larger AI intelligence in the sky, as Sam Altman named it before. So I'm curious, what is your sense of what has been happening this year in this space as an entrepreneur yourself?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and it's all very, very predictable because all of the low-hanging fruit that people thought was, okay, here's this new set of AI capabilities. So let's create what are fundamentally very simple applications, very simple kinds of uses of AI. And so we saw something on the order of, I don't know, 5,000 to 10,000 startups or applications of AI come out within just a matter of months. I mean, probably 6 to 9 months after GPT-3. But if you look at it, if we use some of our language that we have on this call, so let's think about it from the point of view of the ontological complexity of what's happening. So let's think about it as the structures of complexity of evolution, of evolutionary development. And again, this is going to refer to some, integral language. But, GPT, when we did, let me back up a little bit. We did what we called the maturing test. As kind of a play on words, the Turing test, the original Turing test. We did what was called the maturing test, which is we basically started applying human measures of sense-making complexity and cognitive complexity to what GPT was doing. And the question was, how complex is this thing in its sense-making cognitively? Now, we admitted up front, that this is not good science, but it is sort of it's illustrative, it's suggestive, and it's actually an important question. And so what we came up with after we testing both GPT-3 as well as GPT-4 is that number one, it basically comes in at strongly formal operational cognition, which is orange in integral terms. we have a
Could we
pretty
just
good sense.
just for people who don't know what orange is, could we just say it's what you could say the modern world uses as rationally thinking about stuff?
That's right.
How would you?
It's a modern, rational, fairly sophisticated, fairly well differentiated form of cognition. And we see it first emerge with the Greeks 2,500 years ago. And of course, it becomes more and more digested and built out through culture and our social systems and what have you. And basically, society more or less tries to train people to orange today. Our education systems are designed for that. Our business sector certainly tries to do that. And if you look at a curve of if you look at a bell curve of our population, you'll find that the heart of the bell curve really lives at orange or just prior, right? That center of gravity, that kind of late expert to orange. Now, the reason this was important is that if you were going to add value using AI and you were doing anything at a level that it had already digested, which was basically orange, it was not going to be very long before you found yourself obsolete, right? You're not going to build a genuinely kind of, let's think about what economics is. Economics is the measure of whether you're contributing something of value to the world in a way that other people with their free money want to buy, right? And so what was clear is that if people were trying to add value using AI and they were coming in with solutions that were either at orange or prior, just in terms of the complexity, they were going to struggle because it was going to just eat them up. One of the points I made in the talk that you're mentioning is that when AI gets to a spot, it has that entire structure, right? So it gets to orange. It has it all because it has the entire world's knowledge canon at its disposal. So long story short is that that AI will continue to absorb those kinds of applications. The good news is there's going to be a lot of opportunity to add value to the world that needs it post-orange, and actually in the ways that help what Jim rightly said at the beginning. We are going to need and do need more sophisticated tools for sense making, for distributed sense making, for augmented sense making, because humans have humans don't get out of their way very readily in terms of their own sense making limitations. And so I think AI does present a set of tools that can at least help with that. And of course, what we're going to look at today, Context, our platform is a kind of a small step in that direction.
Awesome. Yeah, I remember you saying somewhere in a blog, AI eats the noosphere for breakfast, which refers to this, that you can't really outsmart the AI at a level that it has grokked. Grokking is this computer science term as well for when these machines generalize information, find relevance. Grokking means they get it, and then they can reproduce it at unimaginable scale. So maybe, Tom, unless you have a comment, I would think it would be great for Rob to open up his Context.ai so we can have a look at what we can do with it.
Yeah, and when you do, Rob, I would just ask that you speak to not only where it fits into that current stage of human development from an integral theory, but also how it could be a catalyst for the evolution to move from orange to green to the next tier.
That's a great question. And part of the really, really killer hard question at the core of what you're asking is, how do we get everything we're talking about here? How do we get, if we can have AI that can help our sense making, how do we get it absorbed into the structures, the governance systems, and the decision making and the sense making apparatuses in the real world, such that it does actually aid that in a real way. And so, long story short, is we have to find a way to develop products, services, platforms, whatever, interfaces that fit within the existing social world as we know it. You know, businesses adopt it, politicians and policymakers adopt it, NGOs and social impact organizations adopt it. And I'm not just talking about our platform, I'm talking about, you know, the whole category of things that use AI. That's really the task, because if nobody adopts the stuff, or if what they adopt is really just optimizes their current mode of being and doing, then it's not really going to fulfill its promise to up level us in any way. So that's the hard challenge, and we've certainly designed context accounting for that. But you know, we're very humble about the fact that that's going to be a really tricky thing to do.
Wow, yeah.
So, Georg,
Yeah,
do you want me to just kind of jump into a demo of what
yeah,
context is up to?
I'm still sitting here. I'm still sitting here with this image that you just pulled the plaque out of this entire vision that adding AI will help productivity and increase GDP, which is the main narrative right now.
Well, it's what social systems are optimized for. So every social system we have is rationally optimized from within the autopoiesis of its own social beingness. It doesn't want to do something different than what perpetuates its own beingness. And so you can't go and tell it it needs to follow a different operating system. It's not going to do that. No social system in the world is going to do that. You have to get inside the social system, inside the autopoietic regeneration of that system, and give it a way to transform from within. And that's always the hard task. Now, the good news is tools tend to be one of the most powerful levers throughout all of history. Tools tend to be the thing that do that. You give humans new tools and their horizons open up, what is possible opens up. It disrupts existing power structures just enough where it shakes things up.
Awesome. So let's have a look at this tool.
Sure. I think that's here. Here we go. So
Wow.
what I'll do is I will actually I'll just run a couple of things just to kind of get our feet wet. And then I'll tell you a little bit more about kind of how we thought about it as we go. So
maybe to start things off, for people who have no idea what this is, I mentioned it briefly in the intro, right? But would it be fair to say that you've created a tool that helps knowledge workers, strategists, in the broadest sense, educators, to apply methodological or theoretical lenses to their thinking, the thinking they already have, they came up themselves, so that they can have a look at it from new perspectives, better perspectives, more inclusive perspectives.
We wanted to, one way to say it is we wanted to offer the potential to internalize anyone's thinking anywhere in any context in real time at very low cost. Now, the transformational thesis in that is that a few of them, right? There's a few premises in this. Number one, we believe that more and more of our interactions, just as it is here in this webinar, are intermediated by screens. And so one place where we have to do work from the point of view of fundamental epistemological transformation, sense-making transformation, has to be via screen, right? So that's a really important first point. So that's a premise. The second premise is that transformative cognition is, in fact, this is a little reductive, but it's not wrong. Is a matter of expanded mental models. It's an ability to use more vocabulary, more distinctions, more differentiation in your mind. The more you have vocabularies of differentiation that have been differentiated, the more you have these concepts, the more facile you are in moving sort of integratively across domains, the more your cognition is able to hold and expand. So to some degree, this idea of mental models and visualizing mental models was important. And finally, the way we've built it is it's hierarchical. You'll see this in a moment. So what I'm going to show you, what I've done is I've created this project called Ubiquity University, just because, you know, you guys are the belle of the ball. And I grabbed some information right off your website. This gives me a little bit of project context about who you are, a little bit about what we are talking about today. AI, Ubiquity University is running an initiative to delve into AI. And then I threw some integral philosophy stuff in there because I knew we wanted to look at it through a certain kind of lens of complexity, teal level epistemology, and so on and so forth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new context map. And some of this stuff I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to jump ahead and then I'll go back and kind of rewind about what we're looking at. So let me first do this. There's things I'm going to either delete or change to give it the right context. Because when you're interacting with AI, it only knows what you're telling it to kind of focus on or think about or look at. So I'm going to say, look, I just want to look at Ubiquity University. This is the context I want you to look at. It's a very general statement about Ubiquity, a little bit about, you know, some of your philosophy, but fairly lightweight, right? And all I'm going to do is summarize that. I'm going to put it into the 4 quadrants. And this is, you know, this is just a very light kind of surface scratching to give you a sense of what we're up to and how it works.
So for those who don't know what the 4 quadrants are, you could say the 4 quadrants are one of the most important ideas in integral theory because they allow us to look at reality from 4 distinct perspectives that are totally part of the human experience. So there is an upper left quadrant, which is about intentional and subjective experience, perspectives on reality. Then there is an upper right quadrant, which is more about behavioral and objective perspectives on reality. There is a lower left quadrant, which is about cultural and intersubjective perspectives. And then there is a social and interobjective quadrant. And what integral theory illustrates is that if we leave out certain aspects of reality by not including perspectives from certain quadrants, we come up with a broken or incomplete picture of reality. So let's have a look what came up here.
So it took what I told it about ubiquity, and it refracted it through the 4 quadrants with some categorical frames. So notice that there's actually a lot going on here. The first thing it's doing is it's giving you it's segmented it into these different buckets that are relevant to the topic that you asked for, but then it's also organizing them into the very things that you just mentioned. So the individual, the interior, or the psychological or subjective or phenomenological components of ubiquity versus the things that the exterior to the individual, behavioral or objective, the exterior, the collective, which are social or systemic or network oriented, and then the interior, the collective, which is cultural, values, semantics, ethics, those kinds of things. So what it's done, I mean, if a year ago, it would have taken you 2 or 3 hours to sit down and go, okay, first of all, what am I looking at? Okay, what are the different categories? What are the buckets? Where do they go? Now, how do I write it up? And by the way, that's all still valuable work to do to kind of learn the quadrants. Or now someone who doesn't know any kind of broader integrative thinking could do something, summarize it, and just notice that the learning is subtextual now. The mental model is subtextual. I don't need to ask, you know, the vice president at some corporation to learn, to go on this learning journey, because what they cared about was their context, their topic, their issue. but I have presented it in a way that integrates it. I have presented it in a way that is coming from a teal syntax. It's coming from a higher order, more integrative syntax. And that's what I'm talking about when I say we have to meet people where they are. We have to help them with whatever the emotional, personal motivation, the energy they've got in their topic. And then we can provide the kind of the mental model support and the transformational journey happens, we think, a little bit more naturally that way. This is just an example of that first lens. So let's say now we go, okay, this is really great. Let's learn more about the personal transformation focus. And so we're going to unpack that. And so now we're going to nest a lens. And in fact, I'm going to just make one move here. I'm going to grab some more of this context so it has the full context. I'm going to nest a lens. And usually when you work with something like this, you know, you're not doing it just in I mean, yes, you can use it for 3 seconds on the fly for sure, but you know, I'm doing it here as a demo. I would usually spend a little bit more time thinking, okay, what is it I'm really trying to get to here? What is the lens I really care about? Etc. So I'm just going to look at this context real quick. Okay. So now what I'm going to do, just because I want to unpack that upper left component, which is all around inner development, maybe I will go to a personal growth path. Okay, so now I want to build a personal growth path using what we knew from our earlier context, our super context, and then a little bit of that subcontext that came in that first lens. This
delicious aromas coming from the lens kitchen, I'm seeing. Up there, the upper right. Yeah, so
this is running on GPT-4 Turbo. So that was the brand new release from last week, and 4 Turbo is very strong. It's very fast. It's very smart.
Unless the data center is overloaded, which tends to be the case.
Yeah, that does happen, and and they got hit with a DDoS attack last week. So
they did.
Yeah.
I've heard that OpenAI doesn't accept new pro users because they just have not enough capacity. But wow, something came up here. And it's in.
So what we have is a personal growth path. Looks like a seven stage personal growth path. And I'll just point out, just notice that this nesting is occurring here. So this is you're building out your context map. And if you know anything about how an integralist tends to think of anything in reality, they tend to think holarchies. They tend to think holons. So there's a holon, there's a super holon, and then there's sub-holons, and those sub-holons nest. And so they tend to think, especially the more sophisticated ones, tend to think in these, what are effectively ontic nests. And so what we're doing, if you really want to kind of geek out on what we're doing, I wouldn't put this on the brochure, but we are allowing you to take epistemological models, epistemological slices of an ontic reality, of an ontic thing, and build a nest that models that reality. Now, let me put that more in layman's terms. So if you say we're a nonprofit organization tasked with tackling homelessness, and you wanted to actually take a really sophisticated view of the problem, then the first thing you would do over the course of maybe 2 or 3 months is you would build a very sophisticated model of what's actually happening. And that would be fundamentally an ontic nest that is probably 8, 9, 10 layers deep. It's got a lot of clarity as to what's going on. then you're going to go through and you're going to look for where are the real transformational fulcra within that model. Where's the real opportunities for system transforming moves, rather than, you know, the way most people do it, which is they throw a few points on a PowerPoint, you know, they read the latest literature, they come up with a very linear process, and then they go at it. It's no surprise that in a wicked environment, these things are not affecting transformation. So this personal growth path is just another lens. And you can see that if I open up this, it's telling me, okay, so self-awareness and reflection, and it's giving me 3 really nice foundational moves and skills to build inside of that very first stage. Then it moves on to the next set.
And so,
and of course, we could keep that.
The progression of these stages, this path of personal growth, that is a human invention, so to say. It is a pre-existing framework. And then what AI does, or is that not true?
Not exactly. Not exactly. No. What all that it knows on the personal growth path, what it is basically being instructed to do is build a transcend and include sequence from the context that you gave it. So it's built a stage model. All it knows is that there should be a transcend and include, which has got a natural developmental hierarchy built into the instruction, right? Now, it's not flawless, clearly. And this is the kind of thing that becomes really interesting as AI gets more and more intelligent, more evolved, more data-oriented from real-world feedback loops, et cetera. I mean, it's not too much to say that this screen right here is actually a little bit of the burning metaphorical question of the next decade for AI. If AI can develop I'm going to double the word. If it can develop developmental logic about helping humans develop, and it's embedded throughout our systems, it's going to have a very, very interesting and powerful effect on society.
Rob, to that point, just a quick aside. There's a question from Michael Putz in the chat. He's asking if you've done the maturing test on all the major AI foundation models to see if there's any measured difference in their developmental level. So the folks who are actually creating the models, what stage of development are they? And as a result, what's the stage of development of the models?
Yeah, so the answer to, I heard that question 2 ways, and it's no, no matter which way I interpret it, it's no. So we didn't do any developmental assessment of the people inside of the organizations who are building AI models, nor did we do any developmental assessment like we did with GPT-3 and 4 with any of the other LLMs that are out there. That is actually, frankly, that's important work, and I hope and would hope that somebody from within the developmental communities would actually take that on, because frankly, there does need to be an entire body of work going on right now. It should be going on with that exact set of questions. How, you know, and what is that relationship between all of those things?
Around that point, I would ask, how can this AI do integral thinking if its center of gravity is orange, as we said before? Are there parts of it that can do integral thinking, or do you have to tweak it a lot to get it there? Or?
I'm just going to run some lenses as we talk, and I'll get to that. So no, it's not doing integral thinking per se. What's happening here is we have taken our teal cognitive constructs, we've created a teal syntax for you to work within, where you've got sort of an integral a perspectivalism, right? You get that integral a perspectivalism that you get at teal. That's what we're building into the notion of these mental models. The fact that you can nest things mean you can create hierarchies that are nested, right? So we've built a teal syntax into it. The AI itself, kind of the brains behind the curtain, are still fundamentally orange, but orange is pretty darn smart, right? So it's just important to differentiate here the threads that are going on. Teal syntax, orange cognition, it can emulate teal relatively well, but we haven't seen it actually move. Of course, again, asterisk on that science. And there are other ways in which what we're doing is not yet fully like the application itself can still improve quite a bit to take it further in that direction. So this is what I just ran a illustrate with examples lens, and this is just a way to humanize a topic really quickly. And you'll notice that I ran it on, just to give you a sense. So what I did is I was up here on resilience and adaptability and embracing change, right? So this was one of the subcomponents of one of the stages of this personal growth path. And I just wanted to humanize it. I wanted to go from a third person look, which is what a lot of this is, this kind of objective view. And I wanted to put it into more of a second person look, or as you read it, a first person. So I nested a lens called Illustrate with Examples, which basically says, okay, I'll take whatever topic you gave me, and now I'll start telling stories about the people involved. And sure enough, that's what it did. Now, what this allows for is it allows for an expanded and really fast move into the kind of the seat of the other, in a way that I think brings more empathy into whatever topic you're looking at, whatever kind of context you'd be looking at. And of course, I stuck it into quadrants again. And so it's refracting again. Not only is Susan, it's talking about Susan's story, but here it's talking about Susan from it's putting her point of view here because of her phenomenological or psychological experience, right? Whereas down here, what we're getting is a much more of a systems third person view about government decisions and, policies and what have you. This is extraordinarily powerful for you to be able to actually start to become facile with the multidimensionality of reality as it exists. Now, to channel Edgar Morin a little bit from Complex Thought, like, what's beautiful about true integral teal awareness is the sense that it is all ineffable. You're never going to get there with an analytic process. You're never going to get it there with a synthetic process like this. This is all, as Ken likes to say, like everything I've written is lies. Like these are very useful fictions, right? As so many things that we generate as humans are very useful and fictions. And I think we can hold both. But yeah, there is a way in which we also have to be really humble and use it as a source of inquiry, I think.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the power of using this for Ubiquity students if they start out their journey in a transformational learning environment. We ask them to do specifically assignments that include their personal experience and not just reflect on something in the outside world. We're asking them to combine those two. One of the big hurdles was that before people could do that, they needed, first of all, to be ready to think integrally and then to learn that. And this theoretical kind of requirement, that's not so easy to attain. What I'm seeing here is that you can onboard people as they go.
That's right. That's exactly the point. This is this is a integral teaching coach that you never have to, that someone never has to say, I want that integral teaching coach. It just helps my life. And the more I use it, the more integralized my mind becomes, the more integrated it becomes.
Maybe it would be helpful
So to your use case where you have a student. So what I did is I just grabbed another element from that ubiquity map we did, and now I'm throwing a key questions to ask lens against that, which is like, so if a student was looking at some topic or some subject or whatever, they could immediately, oh, interesting. Yeah. So it made a mistake. Occasionally it'll do this. And that's interesting. Now, there's a couple of things. It's actually kind of interesting what it did. I always like a table approach because it separates things into these different categories. So it's basically saying, okay, the healing and consciousness approaches, because remember, we came down from here, this subcomponent. And then it said, okay, here are these approaches: psychotherapy, meditative practices. Where's my, oh yeah, it built quite a big table. Body-centered therapy, community engagement consciousness. And then it's breaking it up in key principles, goals for students, typical activities, potential benefits, challenges to consider. I mean, this is like a super powerful slide. The problem is it ignored that I wanted key questions. So it made a mistake, which it sometimes does. Brings me back to another point I want to make. We encourage a lot of exploration and experimentation with the platform. Like don't make it precious. If you don't like a lens, recreate it. If you don't like a lens, delete it. Try new things. Go up here to the lens recommender, and let's actually do something. Let's do something totally new. So let's create a new context map. Let's say we're done with that one. I'm going to get rid of all this stuff. You wanted to do something on AI literacy?
Yeah, we could.
I mean, we can do whatever you guys want.
There was one question from the chat by Kurt Kruger. It says something about peace. How do we get AI to help actualize a vision of peace or something like that? It's a bit like a koan. I imagine it's difficult.
It is a koan, but let's just see. World peace.
We can all use that, right?
Now, what it's doing here is actually a second level thinking above what you just saw, right? So if you guys are familiar with Bill Torbert's notion of single, double, and triple loop learning and feedback systems, to some degree, you can it's a kind of a rough metaphor for what's going on here. At one level, what we're allowing you to do is put mental models against anything that you want, okay? So that's the first level. And there's an entire inventory of lenses over here that you can apply. And some of these we'll use. Obviously, I started off quite simply with these ones here, just to kind of get everybody in the conversation. But over time, there's probably 100 templates already. Over time, we're going to have a huge library.
I mean,
just
to play around with these lenses and to see how they actually apply to thoughts you have on your own is priceless. That is,
because you can see where you're true but partial, or run second order thinking analysis around something, or a root cause analysis, or you go into research and academic tools and start to put philosophy. I'll run a philosophy lens because I think you guys will enjoy that one. So let's do a root cause analysis. So we took world peace. It suggests, actually, let me go back. Sorry, I went a little fast. I screwed that up, didn't I? All right, go here. Okay, so that's the first level, like applying mental models in whatever thing. But what we've done now is we've layered on a second layer, what we're calling a metacognitive layer, meaning you tell us what's on your mind. And I don't want you to have to be an integral thinker to even kind of like make that first step, because maybe you don't know how to think about like, this big map and all this stuff. So this is where we begin to sort of provide more of a map of the maps. Like, okay, world peace. Here's some suggestions on how to think about that. Like, here's a root cause analysis. here are these various things that you could start to look at. It's usually a little more verbose than this, but I only put a couple of words in here. That's why it didn't do that. So this is where we can actually instruct you on the metacognitive process. How do you think about your thinking, right? Let's do a root cause analysis on world peace, and we'll put it in a table and we'll see what happens. And obviously we're going to just it's barely scratch the surface of the platform this morning, but it kind of gives you a sense of some of the possibilities, not just, yeah, it does this occasionally where it's like, yeah, sometimes it fails, as I said.
Maybe it's just not enough context.
No, it's just sometimes it doesn't like the syntax, or it is an emergent intelligence, and so we're not. Sometimes it's like I feel like I'm in a discussion with an angry French chef, and so it's like, please give me my lens, and it's a matter of who's more stubborn.
It is.
Sometimes
They
I'll run it
actually
like
found
3 times.
out.
I'm like, no,
They found out that if
Come
you
on.
put emotional encouragement into the prompt, that it will perform better. Actually,
Yeah, I know.
there was a study
It's funny.
recently.
It's great. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, it might not like, being objectified in this way as just a tool.
Curious to think how this will develop as this thing goes smarter. With this announcement this week that OpenAI is now working on GPT-5. That could really make this even more powerful. One of my favorite skills here is to rephrase a sentence or a statement through the lens of different schools of philosophy. You can just simply do later on.
Yeah, we'll show that here in a minute. I think that's an interesting one. And what we're finding is people are using this in one of like 3 or 4 ways. One is, okay, I just have a thought. I just want to frame my thought in an interesting way, and I want to get some different sort of perspectives on it, or I just want to explore it. So it's kind of like a quick hit insight tool, where you maybe use it on a certain thing and you're using it 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, and then you're done. We're finding people also using it in more of an intermediate way, where it's like, okay, maybe we're working on a project together over a couple of weeks. Maybe we have a team discussion that we need to have. And we are attempting to, we have a big decision to make on a meeting, and people use it that way, and then it kind of goes away. And then the third way, which is the way I mentioned earlier, is maybe you want to build out, like if you're an NGO and you're building out a donor pitch, this is a very different way to build a donor pitch for your program. If you're doing a $10 million grant request and you're like, here, this is my context map for our entire theory of change, which we have a really cool theory of change lens and set of tools on here for social impact. That becomes a very different, I'm tired of waiting this. It may have tripped up on my last one, so I'm gonna move on.
Yeah, I think world peace can break any AI. It gave up on us.
Yeah, it did.
It's
interesting. It actually kicked me out. It's like, go away.
What are your thoughts, Tom? I mean, I know you have worked in the world of leadership development and organizational development.
Yeah, I mean, there are multiple pieces to that, Georg, and thanks for the question. Many of the organizations that I have worked with over time, they're spending an extraordinary. I mean, I don't know what the recent numbers are, but it's something in the $20 billion a year spent in the U.S. on maybe globally on leadership development. And yet the focus of it results in most organizations saying they're not getting any value out of what they're spending money on, because the training, the development they're doing is too narrowly focused. And when I look at what Robb is sharing with us, not just the integral framework, which most organizations don't have an understanding of, but the integration of AI into it, I think it would blow their mind, and they wouldn't know what to do with it because they don't have enough of a foundation to understand how to use it effectively.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right, which is why we're starting kind of within our community, although it is also being adopted. I think we have our first Fortune 500 enterprise organizational development department running a pilot. But that's basically right. Like we're going to attenuate a lot of the features that we will introduce will attenuate the functionality, so that makes it much more simple to use, um, without you needing to know anything, right? And the mental models actually even being more streamlined, and so the quadrants will actually show up less. You'll start to see more customized lens shapes. And I think people also will use it very differently. Like a mid-level manager is going to use it one way, a corporate strategist might use it another. I was actually just told this might make it into the chief of staff of one of our U.S. senators' offices. They're going to use it a third way around policy and the Overton windows and things like that, which we have modeled here. So yeah, it really kind of depends on the use, but as you would expect, because we know what the sense making layers are, teal, green, orange, you're going to see it kind of titrate out in exactly that way as well. So what we did here is we just ran a relational exchange map for ubiquity, and it's basically looking at unhealthy and healthy relational exchange between the university and the students, as just an example, and I put it into levels, but basically it's looking at a way that you can take two holons and say, what's the healthy and unhealthy relational exchange between them, right? Now, we're going to have to build a new lens shape for this to show this better, but you can imagine how powerful it would be if you could take any two entities and say, okay, model what that relational exchange looks like, what is healthy relational exchange at their composite levels of being, right? All right, and then we'll finish with that philosophy one, the school of philosophy one. And artificial intelligence is actually a great topic for that one. That's down here in applied meta theory, I think. Is there any particular angle on AI we want to take? Like, how about using artificial?
Yeah, there's a question in the chat that might be helpful in terms of the angle. So the question once again is from Michael Putz. He says, have you measured the developmental level and quadrant of the sensor function included in ChatGPT? Every foundation model may be orange, but each platform has created a safety layer that edits out any query or answer that offends green effectively.
Yeah. I mean, we haven't measured it, but certainly that's our sense. Our sense is that it's got a real embedded green sensitivity. And that, I mean, it just is what it is. Like it's a human institution creating it. Right now, our social sensitivities at the leading edge are green. We don't have a well-differentiated and well-integrated discernment around dominator versus growth hierarchies, which is where green stumbles, and it may take years yet for that to make its way into the Zeitgeist in a way that it becomes institutionally palatable. So I think those are just things we're going to have to live with and be aware of them. On the other hand, you can be clever and lens around that. Actually, you can actually apply lenses that confound that and say, okay, let's apply. Sorry, as I talk, I'm just gonna run this so that so sorry, I'm doing two things at once. I'll get back to that. What school of philosophy do we want to look at this AI as a human transformational tool?
I think this alone, right, to give students this ability really illustrates the term aperspectival. Before it was kind of a theoretical thing, but now it's something you can gamify, you can play with it. And it's not a textbook, it's an interactive textbook based on what you're thinking about, the learning matter that you're interested in. So absurdism seems interesting. I don't know. Jim, what's your favorite flavor of philosophy? The old Greeks, right?
Well, my current favorite is Nietzsche.
Ah, of course.
I had to pick a contemporary philosophy, but obviously it's Plato and the Greeks for sure.
How about Stoicism? That's not quite. It's
Stoicism.
actually you're going back to, if you're Plato, let's do idealism. And again, that's the beauty, is that 30 seconds, if we don't like it, we can do, I mean, we could do all 25 if we want. Actually, we could do all 25 and nest them all together and kind of like, just have some fun with it.
Well, imagine as GPT gets smarter and faster, this would be like within 5 seconds. This is like the dial-up version of connecting to the internet in the 90s.
Yeah,
you had to wait like 2 minutes for it to think.
And it's funny how fast we acclimatize to being spoiled, right? I mean, like, it's doing stuff that would have taken you like a week, a year ago. Instead, you get it in 18 seconds. You're like, God damn it, why is it taking so fast? It's so long. So it's looking at AI as a human transformational tool viewed through idealism. Okay. And again, and what this lens does, notice it's still 4 quadrants, but it goes to a different kind of language: intentional commitments, methodological commitments, social commitments, and values commitments. Because that's a philosophical kind of metaframe, if you will. So in the upper left, it's looking at, okay, what are the ontological commitments from idealism towards AI?
Amazing.
So now, and I didn't really get into this, but maybe I want to tag that as a key insight. So, well, I'll get to that in a second. Because seeing this as a third person, I mean, the entire process of doing these mappings or whatever as a knowledge artifact is really valuable, right? Full stop. But I'm not just interested in that. I want to turn it into a socially generative process. And the question is how to do that. And the way we do that is we add another layer where you can you can add kind of metadata to what you're seeing, so that you could say, oh, if you were doing the very kind of NGO $10 million grant and you built out a map, you could say, oh, here's a leverage point. And this leverage point's really, really important. And now through commenting and what have you, we can start to bring all of those insights that are inside that map all the way up to the top layer, so that now a team can look at it and go, okay, this is how we want to operationalize the mapping that we're doing. This is how we want to actually take it into the real world, so that these things don't just stay as third-person maps. They actually become generative. They actually become they can encourage transformational or translational processes themselves. In the upper right, methodologies, logic, reason, temporal perspectives. Now, this is an interesting one. So this is the purpose and role of philosophy. So how might idealism look at itself as its purpose and role of philosophy as it relates to AI? Yeah, the technology should serve to elevate the spirit and mind. I think it did a pretty good job of channeling you, Jim.
Channeling is an interesting perspective here. Yeah. Okay, wow, yeah. What do you guys think? Looking at the time, I think we could look ahead and tell us more about what's next for you. Like, what do you see yourself in 1 year with this? It just released, right? October, a few weeks. It is a few weeks
Yeah,
old.
we're about, I don't know, 30 or 45 days in, I guess, 60 days. I can't recall. Its startup time is kind of it's like dog time. Everything just kind of expands.
But this is still in
We
beta,
are,
right, Rob?
I mean, yeah, sort of. I mean, because we ship new releases almost like every 48 to 72 hours. We're on a very, very fast execution cycle. So I don't even know what beta means. Like this thing has evolved so much just in the last 90
Gotcha.
days that it
But
just very,
you're already selling the product?
yes, we already have customers. We already have customers.
I am
We're doing
the customer.
Yeah, I think you are. Yes, thank you for joining. I think you joined maybe this morning. Appreciate that. I mean, so we help right now. We've got coaches on here. We've got organizational and leadership development people on here. We've got corporate strategists. We've got lobbyists and government affairs folks. We've got people designing curriculum for developmental programs. I know we have at least one or two, maybe coaching schools. We have some product managers, brand directors. So basically that entire noospheric group that we had talked about, yeah, it's not liking this for some reason. Which is unfortunate because I really like this lens. This is the underlaboring lens from Critical Realism. And I'm gonna keep going until it so yeah, so we are live, and we are and basically our goal is to learn. I mean, we just need to listen very carefully to how people are using it. What does it need? How can we improve it, etc.
Amazing. Well, this is certainly the moment when, something like this could really enter the market in a robust way.
And as a social entrepreneur, like I'm used to things failing. I'm used to things like this. I'm used to trying things and seeing where the opportunities for innovation, where the opportunities for uptake and ingestion are. I don't mind iteratively failing forward or trying things and it not working and adjusting. This is regardless of how it plays out, this is a really important experiment, I think, for those of us in the integrative communities to ask and learn about this intersection between human development, AI, and these really sophisticated, what we all think of are really sophisticated sense-making architectures like integrative meta theory. So it's an experiment that has to be run. It has to be taken seriously, and we have to go at it with everything we've got because the moment is too important, as you said, Jim, and the promise of this stuff is too high. And so it's just our obligation to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
What I found unique about this is that we're actually talking about using AI to think better and not just faster, which is exactly this qualitative shift that you spoke about. So that's really powerful and needs to be heard. And to me, just to pick up what I said at the beginning about integral, it seems maybe this was the missing ingredient for integral thinking to lift off. Maybe this is the killer app for AI and integral. Who knows?
Let's hope.
I mean, I do think that AI will be a version of a killer app for integral. I really do. I mean, whether context itself is or not, we'll probably get run over on the evolutionary highway like everything does, and that's okay and as it should be. But I think AI there's a reason why these things come along right about the same time you see these emergence. I do think that. I think that Teal is enabled by AI in a deep structural way that probably nothing else could have done that in quite the same way. It really, really changes the entire epistemological apparatus of human life.
Mhm.
Yes, and then thinking back, Ubiquity has existed for over 10 years. And one of the big hurdles we always ran into was, how do we scale without having to employ hundreds of integrally aware teaching assistants that help you actually go through this journey of transformation? And I'm not saying AI can replace that human touch, but it can certainly help you on the way so you feel in better company, which at the same
Someone's
time,
asking about your
yeah,
web page.
Okay,
context-driven
so yeah, I'll just
AI.
type that in there and we'll see if that works. Yeah, so we're at ContextDriven.ai.
So
Well,
looking at the time,
yeah,
Jim,
Tom or Georg, do you want to tee us up for tomorrow or make closing remarks?
I
I would
think
just say
this,
this is very
yeah,
exciting, Rob, and Ken must be thrilled at what you guys are up to, because I think you're right. This interface between integral and AI, if it could be pulled off in an elegant and easily assimilated way, could really be kind of a blockbuster for both integral and AI, because
Yeah,
AI
right.
needs this level of wisdom, and integral needs to get into that mainstream in a more systematic way. So, this I really hope that you guys pull it off for all kinds of reasons. This is really amazing what you've demonstrated.
Well, I appreciate that, but as I said, yeah, I mean, we'll do our best, but that's not exactly my expectation. We'll give it the good college try though, and whatever we do, we will learn and pass our learnings on to the next, whoever's dumb enough to try it the next time.
Well, as you say, we all have had experiences of getting run over on the evolutionary highway.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. Yep.
I think part of my concern is, and we touched on this a bit yesterday with the U.S. government, with the Chinese government, with other governments around the world wanting to utilize AI, but also put constraints and restrictions on it. The folks who are developing AI platforms have their own, they're all trying to figure out a business model that ensures that they continue to exist and they get a return on the billions of dollars going into it. And so I continue to think about and today has been really helpful in just thinking about the consciousness that's creating the AI, the governing regulatory consciousness that will inhibit AI, and how do we ensure that AI actually delivers the promise that it could, and not be limited by either intentionally or unintentionally. If it's orange consciousness that's creating it, that in and of itself can create a governing factor. And so that would be, I didn't fully appreciate that until coming into the conversation today, Rob, and I really value and appreciate the conversation we've had.
That's great. I thank you. I appreciate you saying that. Just 10 seconds on that. I think that one thing that might give us a little bit of comfort, again, this is a view, it's a hypothesis, but I do think this is, I'm willing to bet this is how it plays out. I've said this for a year. I think AI ends up more like electricity as a commodified utility than anything. And the important point there is that you won't be able to erect a gate around it. You're not going to end up with a closed garden like Facebook or some proprietary data models that are so groundbreaking that you've erected some economic monopoly. I just don't think that's the way it goes. I think the decentralization of the models has already occurred. Everybody's going to end up with their own their own AIs, it's not going to be particularly profitable to be in that business. And you're going to need to add value-added services. The good news is I think that raises all boats. It's not going to be the same thing as what we saw in Web 2, where you get these walled gardens and then extractive rents from that.
That's
Wow,
very
this is
interesting perspective, Rob, because I think many are rushing in as if it's the new gold rush.
Yeah, I don't see it that way. I think that moats are going to be harder than ever to build, and the people who already have moats, the existing businesses, they're going to be easier to defend because adopting AI within their organizations is trivial. I mean, it's not totally trivial. There's obviously work to be done, but they have the existing power structures already in place, and I think AI helps them defend those. And so the existing companies, I think it'll as I called flatten and freeze, like the innovation goes to infinity, and so it tends to actually upstarts actually have a harder time of building these economic moats.
So, just continuing on that analogy for a moment, and if you want to take out your crystal ball, when we saw the gold rush in the Bay Area, the people who made the money were the Levi Strausses, who were selling jeans, the folks selling the picks and the shovels and the dynamite and other things. So who are those players even out there yet? Who are those players that will be the sort of the infrastructure that enables the gold to be mined?
I mean, that's what obviously billions of VC is attempting to discern. And I mean, OAI will be and is an early winner, but whether or not theirs is even sustainable or not is very much an open question. Like I said, I think all these LLMs end up as ubiquitous commodities in a matter of just a few years. In fact, they're already replicating most of the power on very, very small devices on open source models. And so, yeah, I don't think that's where the ultimate value is. I think there will be a lot of cleverness in terms of real value adding applications that we've never thought of before. And appropriately, those people will be rewarded for their ingenuity and creativity and finding those things. But I think there's an extraordinary amount of value to unlock by applying AI to our existing problems.
Mm.
And I guess that's what I'd say to the students in closing is like, don't be afraid of this future, because whatever reality hands you, you can look at it and go, well, what's it need now? And so there's always an opportunity to do it, whether it be in, hey, help governments think about the governance problem that AI presents. Like that's going to be a growth industry, right? I mean, no matter where you look, there's always a growth industry, there's always jobs, there's always things to do, and there's always ways to contribute that are really positive.
And when I'm hearing you right, you're also saying that this AI revolution will not go the same way as Web 2.0, which led to this techno-feudalism, where we are invited towards
it doesn't have network effects.
Meta.
AI doesn't have network effects.
AI
Web 2 built monopolies and economic rents off network effects. AI has no network effects.
Couldn't you say that the biggest model that is closed, like OpenAI, they're trying to build a network effect right now for them?
I don't think no. In fact, all of the enterprises said, no, you're not going to do that. So instantly the enterprises put a worldwide ban on adopting OAI because of that exact move. And so OAI is really not going to have any more brilliantly proprietary data than the other 50 large organizations that are building LLMs. And yeah, so I don't think there's going to be breakthrough 10x value on the back of your LLM that no one else has figured out.
A new resource like water, electricity, intelligence coming to you to the comfort of your home. You can talk to it, learn philosophy with it. And tomorrow we will talk about what it means if you have a relationship with it. like relationship as a friend. And yeah, we have fantastic guests more. We have the German trailblazing AI researcher Joscha Boch, who has worked for Intel on cognitive architectures. We have Ubiquity's very own Griffin Deleuze, who has consulted with Apple CEOs and Steve Jobs, among other things. And we have Dr. Robb Smith, who has worked with Gene Houston and has created the Earthwise Constitution and a game that helps us grapple with the implications of AI. So the three of us tomorrow will look at this conundrum of what it means when you talk to GPT-4, because with the new functionality, if you have an iPhone or you have an iPad, you can speak to it in natural language and it will talk back to you in natural language. And after you've done this, you feel extremely understood. And to me, it felt like as if I had spoken to a real person. I had like this, if they would have done an MRI of my brain, probably the same parts would have lit up that light up after a really good conversation. Which means my experience was...
If that wasn't the case, movies wouldn't work.
Right. So the question tomorrow is...
the bug in the code is the mirror neurons in the human system. So we see something and it evokes something in us. And I think that's going to create an amazing second person relationship with AI.
Or a great hijacking by interests. And what does it mean about love? And what about love, Rob?
Well,
right, these are all the questions.
Aren't you afraid of the AI dystopian future? The machines taking over. I say, look, the problem is not AI with the people. The problem is the people with the people. Like AI just gives people a more clever way to hurt each other. So it's still people we got to worry about. It's not AI I'm worried about.
Well put.
Wonderful.
Good.
Well, thank you all for
Great
today.
to see you guys. It was a lot of fun, and I appreciated the conversation. Happy to answer other questions as they come through via email, or you just pass them my way. And but yeah, thanks for the time today, guys.
Well, see you all on Humanity Rising or the Context AI community as we play with this new technology. So thank you very much, and see you tomorrow for our final day of this AI Literacy Week. I certainly feel a bit more literate after today. So thank you, Rob. It's been great to have you on the show.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Georg. Thank you, Tom.
Yeah.
That'll bring us to a close for today, everyone. You're welcome to the after session chat, and we'll see you then all tomorrow for our fifth and final session on AI literacy. Thanks so much. Bye for now.